I want to talk about learning the basics in fighting games, right? And I guess in this case, since I play Guilty Gear, let's talk about Guilty Gear, right? When people learn fighting games, part of the reason why they try to learn it is because they see something cool on like YouTube. You know, they see something cool on YouTube, see something cool on Twitter or what have you, and then they're like, man, I want to do that, right? Obviously, they like go get the game, try the game out, and then, you know, they immediately try to learn that thing. Or let's say they've already been playing and they kind of play the game to some degree, and they see the cool thing and they want to do the cool thing, and then they try it in matches or whatever, and they can't do the cool thing because either A, they don't have the execution or what have you, right? So this kind of stems into like why you should learn the basics, right? It doesn't matter what character you pick, the basics are important, right? Learning your spacing, learning your footsies, learning what buttons do what, learning your anti-airs, where you have situational anti-airs. And granted, that's a little bit more nuanced, but you know, the basics is generally like general poking, making sure you have a good anti-air, making sure you have reliable bread and butter combos you can go into, maybe a counter hit combo or two. And that's not really too advanced. These are just things that you just should already have kind of like on lock, right? It's like playing Street Fighter and not being able to do short super, right? Not being able to do crouch short super is really bad, you know, in the instance that you need it, or simple hit confirm, right? You need to have those things because you can't maximize your damage. So when you're learning fighting games, you have to have these things down, right? So taking it to a point of like anti-airs, right? You all know if you play like a Shoto or a character with a short, you can, you know, you have an easy way to anti-air, right? But then you take it into a game like Guilty Gear where like, you know, you can air block, you know what I'm saying, the anti-airs DP pretty freely because there's no more air unblockables in Guilty Gear anymore, right? So you have to be smarter about that and like react to when they're throwing out like a button and using like 6P or forward punch, if you will, or if you have a situational anti-air like let's say Geo crouching heavy slash or close slash, you know, chip 6H, 5H, you know, 6H, 5H, 2H, all those are anti-airs. You know, some of those require you to be at specific spacings and stuff like that to find some kind of consistency for them. So it helps you with like your spacing, it helps you make better, well-informed decisions about how you want to play your neutral, etc., right? So a lot of people tend to overlook this, and I think it's bad. You know, it's not, you're not doing yourself any kind of service by like disregarding fundamentals. Like sometimes some of the best players play super fundamental, don't do any like none of the flashy stuff. They're just like, you know, fireballs and uppercuts, you know, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of people, for example, back in the Street Fighter 4 days, you had people on like Kotaku complaining of how like, oh, Street Fighter is just a fireball fest, they're not even fighting. It's like, I mean, you know, these are people that are not even taking into consideration the micro spacing around the fireballs, where they're reactable, where they're not reactable. Like it's on a surface level, they don't get that, right? But if you're learning the fighting games, you do have to learn those nuances of like where it's reactable, where it's jumpable, where it's not jumpable, where you have to force yourself to walk and block, etc. So, and this is all fundamental, you know. And even then, you know, learning like a basic, you know, footsies. Like when I say footsies, as in put, you know, like you're learning your poking game, right, with your character. So if you have like, say in Guilty Gear, right, you know, you have Kai. Kai's normals are actually very good. They have great hitboxes on them, and they do hit from afar. They are great in combos. They are great to poke and annoy the hell out of your character, or rather, they're good to annoy the opposing character, you know, that you're playing against. And you can create like a wall of just normals without even doing anything. You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that people overlook, and you know. If you're watching this and you're listening to me right now, I trust me when I say that that's not something you want to do when learning like Guilty Gear or any other fighting game. In this case, we'll just keep using Guilty Gear, and learning how to use your special moves is also a thing, right? With Kai, you know, his special moves aren't really the safest, right? However, you do have ways to confirm into your special moves. You do have ways that you can delay your strings into your special moves to kind of trick up the opponent. And like, let's say like his fireball is not really safe on block, right? But if you do like a delayed string into your fireball, then that changes it. It doesn't matter that it was unsafe per se. It's just the fact that you've opened up another door to essentially use that tool now. Sure, they'll be like, oh, I should have punished you for it. Well, guess what? You didn't. And it's not that you shouldn't have not punished me. It's just you did it in such a manner that it had like a different rhythm to it, you know? And that's another thing, right? When you're learning, you learn to build up a rhythm and whatnot, and how to change up your string. Sometimes you'll just auto pod the string because it's like okay to do, because it's safe, you know. But like after a certain point, when you're playing against people and of like higher caliber, like that starts to slowly like diminish, right? Like even myself right now playing Jacko, like a lot of times I'm using like 5k 2k into a soccer ball kick and then summon. Honestly, doing that all the time is bad because they get a read on my pressure and then they can counter hit me and then I take a lot of damage. It's sometimes it's hard to break out the muscle memory because, like, for example, I guess with Jacko, it's such a good string to like kind of do that it makes sense to just do it a good chunk of the time. But you know, the underlying theme here is to change up the time, like change up the timing and going for the soccer ball kick to like frame trap them into pressing a button and fishing for a counter hit. Obviously I'm not all there yet with the counter hit combo, but you know, obviously there is something there in that regard. Maybe at the RC it, maybe not. It just depends, you know. Maybe it's screen specific, maybe it needs to be in the corner, maybe in the mid screen you can do something else, maybe it'll go into a setup. And then as you can see, like the basic parts of the game now turn into more complex and they lead to more complex situations, right? So having good footsies is important, having good ways to confirm is important, delaying your strings are important. You know, it is literally like the entire, like anything you can think of in terms of fundamentals is there. And I feel like even like a basic throw game, you know, tick throws, like in Guilty Gear Strive, strike throw is a really strong general set of pressure in the game, right? And if you're not decent at that, then you know that's another part of your pressure game that's now weak. Now you're lacking in like your throws, and you don't want to be lacking. You don't want to be caught lacking in your fundamentals. Seriously. If you can't even set up a basic tick throw to open up your opponent and you're just pressing the same string over and over with like the same rhythm, you're not giving your opponent anything to think about anymore. Like everything is already made plain and simple. It's all clear. It's clear as day. You've officially played yourself, I guess is the best way to look at it. You legitimately like played yourself. So you got to think about that. How do you start learning fundamentals? I mean, you start learning fundamentals by asking yourself the basic questions. What's my anti-air? 2, what are my best pokes? 3, what are my good up close pokes, aka range 0? You know, what are your mid-range pokes? So basically you ask yourself the long range, mid-range, close range pokes, your anti-airs, and like regular bread and butter combos, you know? And there's some things in regards to anti-airs you might switch up. Maybe you have to do an air-to-air, like a jump jab or something like that to try to discourage them from jumping at you. You know, meet them air-to-air and change the situation to something else. Like there's, you know, once you get to the fundamentals portion, then more questions can be asked and answered. Like, does that make sense? Like it's a lot of give and take, right? So because you know how to anti-air now when you anti-air, right? So let's say like we'll use Axel, right, in Strive. Axel's crouching slash is an amazing anti-air in this game, right? Really, really amazing. It leads to a lot of damage. Now, if you happen to trade with that, you have to know how to combo it, right? Because let's say you practice doing it on a clean hit and the clean hit anti-airs him. Like when I say clean as in like it's a clean anti-air, it doesn't trade or anything like that. It hits for a counter hit, you use the counter hit confirm, boom, you're good to go, right? But what happens when it trades? You also have to be ready for the trade. So it now turns into, okay, I know how to anti-air normally. Oh shoot, now I gotta go into the advanced style of anti-airing with it where I'm looking for a trade. Maybe you're looking for it to trade. Maybe in this matchup, it's good that it trades so you can take advantage of the trade and come out on top, right? Because Axel's 2S low profiles anyway, and the angle that it hits is really strong for where he's at. Sure, there's a dead zone, but it's very difficult for a lot of it's difficult for a lot of the cast to get into that dead zone to punish him or like kind of throw off his anti-airs. So you learn how to reorient yourself. You hit the counter hit trade 2S into anti-air combo, and it's like, cool. You took this much damage, your enemy took that much damage. You know, that's a big difference. You know, so you have to be ready for those things, and that all comes from the fundamentals. You know what I'm saying? Then yeah, and the other part of it is also air throwing too, right? Where you want to change up like how you want to anti-air them, because air throws are anti-airs. So let's say, you know, this guy's jumping very predictably. You have a good read on it. You react to it and you see it and you air throw it. It's like, boom. All right, now you can turn that into another situation. You know, so you see what I'm saying? Like everything stems from the fundamentals. Like everything stems from the fundamentals. If you don't practice those things and just have them down, like I said, it's just going to be a very difficult time down the road in fighting games, no matter which one you play. You know, it doesn't matter if you're playing Tekken, Guilty Gear, Street Fighter, you know, World Heroes, freaking Fatal Fury. It matters not, KOF. There is still a level of fundamentals, and each game definitely takes the fundamentals of fighting games on a different level, right? Street Fighter is obviously the most basic. Guilty Gear is a little bit, actually not even a little bit, it's a lot more advanced, because, you know, you introduce air dashing into the mix, double jumps, triple jumps, you know, double air dashes, all those things kind of like take those same basic concepts and they're kind of like excelled even further, you know, because you have more control over your jump arc, and having control over your jump arc is very important in fighting games too. That's a little bit more of an advanced thing, but, you know, regardless, the game does have air dash and stuff like that. So on a per game basis, while the fundamentals of fighting games are universal, each game has its different set of, you know, rules and subsystems and stuff like that you have to get used to take those same fundamentals to the next level. You know what I'm saying? How does someone intermediate to fighting games know they actually have the fundamentals down? I might feel like I do, but do I really? I mean, think of it this way, right? Let's say you're playing online and you are playing against an online opponent, and you take the most basic things and you start winning. So take, for example, you start playing a basic game of like, I'm gonna control this one spot, and if they jump at me, I'm gonna anti-air them, and I'm gonna go back to this spot and I'm gonna control that spot, right? If you do that, then, and you do it well against more than one opponent, then I would say that you definitely have a fairly decent grasp of fundamentals, because that means you didn't have to do anything special to win. You didn't do any Oki situations, you didn't do any mix-ups, you just beat them with 2 + 2 is 4. So if you can beat someone with like, okay, I'm gonna just press this button right here, I'm gonna control this space right here, I'll anti you with this right here, and this, like, if like this area is my bubble and you have to respect this bubble, I'm gonna force you to respect this bubble, then I would say that you probably have fundamentals down. But fundamentals are still like a it's like an ongoing thing. Like, just because you have fundamentals doesn't mean that like it stops, right? It's like, I understand the basics, but like there's other ways to kind of push forward within the basics, right? There's more advanced things to the basics. That makes sense. Should make sense. Yeah, it's never ending. It's like art, you know, like the journey to being a great artist never ends, you know. And it's the same with this. The journey to being a great player, it never stops. Like, you'll always learn more nuanced things to make your fundamental game that much better, you know. It's yeah, fundamentals are definitely conditioning. Okay, I feel that once you start doing basic stuff with intention, that's meeting your basic fundamentals, but there's always more. Correct. Absolutely. 100%. There's always more. Like, once you have things down and you're doing stuff with intent, like, it makes more sense, you know. You're gonna stick to eating glue. I mean, that wins games, you know. And I guess it also depends on what you want out of your fighting games too, right? Like, if you're okay with just going ham, nothing wrong with that. Just know that, like, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like it doesn't really matter if you do go ham in a sense too, because there's you know, there's some merit and skill to that. But like, you're also denying yourself being good at like literally the basics. Like, you don't want to not be good at the basics to some extent. If you're just like super unga bunga, sure, you'll win games, you know, but you know, that's not how tournament players win. And everyone's goal is different. I'm not gonna sit here and say everyone here's a tournament player, everyone here's trying to be a tournament player. Nah, I know that's not the case. Some people just play just to be good, because they just want to be good, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. As long as you understand like why you're playing and what you're playing for, and if you're okay not learning those skills, that's fine. Because in some cases, some players are actually good like at just strictly rushing people down.
How you doing?
You know, I can tell you from experience. Yo, thanks for the follow. I can tell you from experience, right? I used to be I'm still a very aggressive player, but at the same time, I've also learned that like from playing a multitude of players over the course of time, that like sometimes that doesn't always get you the win. Sometimes you have to play a little bit more passive. Sometimes you have to do a little bit more reading. Sometimes you just have to see more out of your opponent. Sometimes you have to put things in place to make your opponent give you information. Because when you get the fundamentals down, then there's another layer to it, which is gaining information. I'll get into that another time, because that's a whole nother topic in itself. But like, you know, it's there is merit to every style of play. It's just knowing when to bring it out and knowing when to turn on and knowing when to turn it off. If you turn it on and it's on too long, your opponent might get a read on that and then take a chance and do something buck wild, and it throws off your unga bunga, and you're like, man, he hit me with that. There's no way he's gonna do it again, and he does. And then you start to regress because you don't know whether or not you should be going for that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So play however you like, but I'm gonna keep pushing that, like, having the fundamentals down, playing on a fundamental level is always good, and it helps you stay in line, believe it or not. I tend to believe that it keeps you in line, because if you don't have to be advanced on something, why bother? If your opponent is not showing you that you have a reason to be more advanced in your approach or the way you punish them, it's pointless to try to go past 2 + 2 is 4. It's like, if your opponent is dying to the same mix-up, why would you change it? Like, just do it until he blocks it. That's kind of a fundamental thing too. Like, you do it until they stop blocking, until they start blocking your mix-up properly. Otherwise, mix them up, and it's not really a mix-up because you just know you're gonna get it. If a lot of people, at the higher levels of play, if they recognize that a player is dying to one thing, there's no reason to do anything extra. Literally, like, sometimes players kill themselves because they want to do more, and it's like, why do you need to do more when the opposing player can't even keep up with your basics? And then they do something that throws off, that cool new thing that you learned or whatever, and it's like, some people, they mentally get thrown off of their game because they're like, man, I can't believe I missed that. I practiced that every day. He just pressed jab on it. Nah, there's no way. And you try it again, and he jabs you again, and then he kills you that time. One time he just jabs you out. Next time he just jabs you and does like a full-on combo, and you die for it. Like, you have to know when to hold him and when to fold him, man. Trust. Don't need to step up your game until they show you a reason. Yep, pretty much. Yeah, like, player abusing hover. Yeah, hover dash slash. Yeah. You just gotta respect it. You have to. All right. Well, if you're not gonna master out of it and show that you're willing to, like, get around it, that player has all the right in the world to just keep hover dashing on you all day long and just making you look like a chump. It is what it is. I have an issue of dropping a complex, precise input, getting punished for it, and then mentally needing to do it again, even if it's not a good option at that point. Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. That happens to a lot of people. They're like, there's no way he was that smart. And it's like, well, maybe he hadn't seen the setup and he's taking a chance because he doesn't know what he's looking at. So does that mean you should try it again? Yeah. Just not immediately. If you do it immediately, you're just giving yourself away, And there's more to it than that, but yeah. But yeah, I think that probably will just do it here for fundamentals. There's more I can say, but I think this will suffice for now. We can always talk more about this another time. I think it's still like a really good topic, because I feel like fundamentals are just like, they're just ongoing. There's like, it never stops with the fundamentals. Like, even at like the basic things, even at life, you can be really good at those things and then come back and revisit them, and you're like, man, I'm doing this even better, more efficiently. Just think of anything in your life that you do on a basic and fundamental level that you do like efficiently, and it's because you do it all the time. That's essentially what this is. So be sure to practice your fundamentals, man. Be sure to do it, because you should. You should. Anyhow, that's gonna do it for fundamentals, you guys. Just gonna do it right there.